Hello Internet, my name is Father Casey Cole and I have been ordained a Catholic priest for exactly 1 year. It has been the strangest, most challenging, joy-filled year of my life, and I'm here to answer your questions about it. Did you always know that you wanted to become a priest? No, not a chance. Growing up, I had no interest whatsoever being a priest. I didn't even want to go to church. I believed in God, I thought it was a good thing to do, I believed that Jesus died for my sins, all the things a Christian needs to do. But the idea of being a priest, the idea of being celibate, never crossed my mind whatsoever. I always thought that I was called to marriage, and so in high school and college, I dated, I thought about having kids. That was the way that I was going to give God glory. Part of it was that I'd never really met a Catholic priest that really connected with me. They were always old, they were always so different, and so I could never see myself being that type of person. But when I was in college, I met a couple priests that were very inspiring, that related to me very well, and I began to think, maybe I could do this as well. What's interesting about that, though, is that even after I joined the Friars, I wasn't necessarily sure if I wanted to become a priest. You see, as a Franciscan, some of us are brothers and some of us are priests, and I knew in college that I wanted to be a Franciscan, to live this life of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and humility in the way of St. Francis of Assisi. But I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to be ordained. There were many other ways to live this, and so it wasn't until the end of my first year when I began to really put myself in that role, to really think about myself as a priest, that it became a reality. For me, the biggest thing holding me back was a sense of unworthiness. I didn't think that I was capable of it or that God would accept me as a priest. I had too many challenges of my own. But it was when I realized that it was actually Christ that confers the sacraments, that it was Him who helps people and that I'm just kind of a vessel, I realized that this was something I could do. What has been the most difficult experience for you this year? You mean besides the pandemic? That's kind of affected everyone, but not exactly ideal for a first-year priest. I got a couple months under my belt, but the last 3 months kind of got yanked away from me. No end of Lent, no Palm Sunday, no Easter Vigil, goodbye the entire Easter season. It was a bit tragic. I celebrated the Easter Vigil with no one in attendance. It was by far one of the saddest things I've ever experienced. But you know what? Everyone went through that, and it was a harrowing experience. I think I learned from it. I think besides that, though, a very difficult part of this year was being assigned to the University of Georgia, only to find out 4 months later that we would be withdrawing from it. So just as I was getting to know people's names, just as I was beginning to learn my place in it, I had to go into pastoral mode of consoling people, of dealing with people's sadness, of basically being on hold. It kind of stifled my creativity, but it helped me learn another side of being a priest, which is consoling people. What has been the best experience for you this year? By far, as a Catholic chaplain, hanging out with the students. Everyone always says that, oh, it's so great to hang out with students, they have so much energy, it makes you feel young. Yeah, I mean, I guess. I'm already young though, so I don't need to feel any younger. For me, it was just kind of their wide-eyed view of the church. They're kind of blank slate. They come with a bit of their opinions, a bit of formation, but they're so eager to ask questions. They want to be formed. They want to challenge things. They want to see the world in a different way, and it's really wonderful to walk with them and help to form them in their faith. Do your family members and friends address you as Father? No. Can you imagine if my sisters called me Father Casey? If my mom called me on the phone, hey Father Casey, how are you? No, that is absolutely ridiculous. And if there are any priests out there who do that, who have their friends and family call them Father, you are insane. And in fact, the bishop who ordained me said so. When he ordained me, he spoke to the congregation and he said, all of you who have known Casey for many years, you must still refer to him as your brother, as your friend. Do not call him Father. He needs the humility, one, but he needs you as your friends and family around him. Which, of course, prompted one of my friends to refer to me as Father no matter the situation, probably just because he wanted to disobey a bishop. Hey, can you get me a beer? Yes, sir, of course, Father Casey. Friends. What are the 3 most important things you have learned this year? Great question. Number 1, when baptizing a child, be sure that you have the gender correct. Otherwise, you are going to embarrass yourself in front of the whole congregation calling that beautiful little girl a boy. Number 2, when filling in for a neighboring priest at a different parish for a funeral, Be sure that everyone in the congregation knows what they're doing, particularly when the readings are. Otherwise, you will have a catastrophe on your hands. And number 3, do your best to learn people's names as quickly as possible. For the first month that you're in a new parish, people will repeat their names over and over, but by month 6, they're going to expect that you know who they are. Saying, "Hey, you," just won't cut it. As a priest, do you ever experience doubts? It depends what you mean. If you mean lying awake at night wondering if there's a God being torn apart by an existential crisis, then no, that's something that I'm pretty well confident in. But if you're talking about just the simple things that come in and out of your minds, the questions that you have to deal with, then yeah, I think it's good actually to doubt. Doubts help strengthen our faith. They refine our faith. Questions actually make us stronger, and in fact, I have those minor doubts all the time. Being a priest doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect or that you know everything for sure. I think no matter who you are, you will always have questions. It's part of the nature of being human. Do you agree with everything the church teaches? Yikes, that is a tricky one. Like I said before, I'm a human being. I come with my flaws, and just being ordained is not going to magically make me a perfect person. There are certainly some doubts in me about some of the teachings of the church. I find myself struggling with some of the things the bishops say. Does this mean that I have major issues with the dogmas of the church? No, absolutely not. But there are certain doctrines, there are certain disciplines of the church, the way that we act, certain statements that popes or bishops have said that do leave me a little divided. Not entirely sure if I buy that. I do have my own conscience that I have to deal with at times. But as a representative of the church, it is not my role to share them with you. I'm not going to get up in the pulpit and say, "You know, I think the Pope is wrong." I don't think that's necessarily what I was ordained to do, and certainly would be against my vow of obedience. It is a difficult challenge for sure, but I think it's also a blessing in this order. I'm not called to think about everything and to become my own master. Sometimes my role is simply to live out the faith as it's been handed on to me. What advice would you give to those entering seminary today? Excellent question, and trust me, I have a lot to say on the matter. A few months ago, I made this video in which I talked about the bad reasons that people want to become priests and why they should leave, and I'll probably make a video sometime soon of expanding this question, all the advice I have, but here I'll just say one thing. Don't focus on your grades. Who cares what grade you get? No one will ever ask me what grade I got in whatever class. Focus on the mission of Christ. Think about serving the people of God and what you will need. Read all the extra readings. Do everything you can possibly think to do that will prepare you to serve. It doesn't matter what accolades you have, what grades you get, what degree you have behind your name. No one cares. Prepare. Do more than you have to do. Remember that people's lives are at stake here. As a priest, do you pray the rosary daily? Believe it or not, no, I don't. In fact, I almost never pray the rosary. While it is a major devotion for some people, meaning a lot to their prayer lives, it's something that really has never spoken to me personally, and it's not something I'm required to do. As a priest, I am required to keep the liturgy of the hours, morning and evening prayer, and the other hours throughout the day. And for me, that is a much better way to keep in touch with God, reading the Word, meditating on the readings of our church. I love Lectio Divina and I love silent meditation, but the Rosary, just not one of them. What is your approach to hearing confessions? For me, it comes down to two things. The first is that it's all about listening for the contrition, that sorrow that they express. In some ways, it doesn't even matter what the specific sins are, it's about how they feel about them and how they want to change their lives because of it. That's really the crux of the sacrament, is conversion. And so how can I pull that out? How can I build upon it so that they will truly hate their sin and want to be a better person? The second part of that plays on that, which is that I'm always listening for what's beneath the sin. Sure, you may have done X, Y, and Z, but I'm interested in wondering why. What facilitated that? What near occasions of sin maybe led you to that? Because that gives me an insight in how I can help you. Simply saying, don't do that anymore, often isn't helpful. But if you can say, What do you think led you to that? What can you change in your life so that you'll not be in that situation anymore? These things are often helpful for people. What is your favorite sacrament to celebrate? Truly an impossible question, and I just can't answer it. It's like asking a parent which one of their children is their favorite. They all have their wonderful qualities, all bring them joy in their own. It's baptism. Absolutely. Eucharist is wonderful, sure. You get to be the presider of a giant congregation. You get to preach, and there's just something beautiful about all the dynamism of the Eucharist. But nothing compares to baptism. To be able to pour that water on a child and wash away their sins, to put oil on them and to crown them like Christ, truly to mark them with a permanent character before God. There's nothing like it. You are changing a life. I have never went to a baptism and not been filled with overwhelming joy at what I was doing. Truly my favorite sacrament. Do you have any further aspirations to become a bishop or pope? No, none whatsoever. Absolutely not. I cannot think of a worse job in the entire world. No offense to our bishops and pope. They're wonderful people, yes, and we need them, but it is not my calling, and I most certainly do not see it as an elevation or promotion. Their jobs are difficult, they're very heavy in administration, and frankly, as a religious, as a Franciscan, it is not something that any of us desire. If we were to be asked to become bishop, we would actually technically have to leave the Franciscan order, because you can't be in vows and have obedience to an ordinary when you yourself are an ordinary. You can't take a vow of poverty as a bishop, and so for me it's kind of a betrayal. Sure, some people see it as a wonderful service to the church, and yeah, I guess, but for me, I made vows to God to live as a Franciscan, not as a bishop. Please, if there's anyone out there thinking about throwing my name into those ranks, I'll share some political views or heresy or something, whatever gets me out of that. I do not want to be a bishop ever. And finally, what were you most and least prepared for when entering ministry? By far, the thing I was most prepared for was preaching. Makes sense, right? It's not something that just starts when you become a priest or a deacon. You can preach all the time. You can give talks, and I had many of opportunities through high school and college, my first couple years as a friar, to practice that skill, to get comfortable speaking in front of people. It's obviously something I have a natural talent to, I know, and something I get a lot of practice with here on this channel. Standing up and preaching in front of people during Mass was slightly different, but not all that big of a deal. On the other hand, the thing that I was just not prepared for at all, and I don't know how you can prepare for, is just the chaos of people's lives, the tragedies that you're thrown into. People will come up to me after Mass and just tell me their sob stories, tell me the struggles that they're facing. Sure, in seminary we do some fishbowl things where you sit around and you practice scenarios, but it's never real. It's never quite like it will be out in the world, and there are no consequences in a classroom. Sometimes I'm just presented with things that I've never heard of, people's tragedies that I just don't know how to deal with. And so all I can do is approach with humility, listen as best I can, and try to let Christ work through me. I know I am not an expert, and so I can't take on more than I am trained to do, but I can be a friend and a companion, someone to walk with them in Christ. And there you go. Thank you for all who submitted questions. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to all of them, but I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel. Let me know if you have any further questions I can answer in the comments, and here's to many more years as a priest.